I learned very early that fame doesn't whisper, it shouts. Sometimes it applauds you. Sometimes it turns on you without warning. And sometimes, when you least expect it, it says your name in a way that cuts deeper than any silence ever could. The first time I heard my name being dragged, I wasn't on stage. I wasn't under bright lights or wrapped in applause. I was backstage, standing barefoot on a cold concrete floor, listening to voices I wasn't meant to hear. Voices that thought walls were thicker than they really were. Voices that believed success made me untouchable, or worse, that it made me disposable. They said I was finished. They said my voice wasn't what it used to be. They said the audience only clapped out of nostalgia, not love. And the hardest part wasn't the cruelty. It was the certainty in their tone. Like they had already written my ending, and I had missed the memo. I remember standing there, heart pounding, hands shaking just enough to betray how much it hurt. I could have walked away. I could have let it slide, let the rumors grow legs and run ahead of me like they always did. That's what people expected. Silence, retreat, a carefully managed smile. But something inside me snapped that night. Because I wasn't just hearing criticism. I was hearing judgment. I was hearing dismissal. I was hearing people reduce my life, my work, my sacrifices, to a headline they could control. And I realized something in that moment. If I didn't answer, the lie would become the truth. What the world didn't know, what no one outside those walls could see, was how close I was to walking away from everything. How heavy the pressure felt. How lonely it was to carry a legacy everyone felt entitled to tear apart. That night forced a choice. Stay quiet and let my name be rewritten by others. Or step forward and remind them exactly who I was. They thought they were dragging my name through the mud. They had no idea they were about to hand me the microphone. And what I chose to say next didn't just defend me. It became iconic. The rumors didn't reach me through newspapers or television screens that night. They reached me the way the most painful truths always do, by accident. By proximity. By standing too close to a door I wasn't supposed to be near. The arena in Atlanta was already buzzing hours before showtime. I could feel the vibration of it under my feet as I walked the backstage corridors, wrapped in a robe, my hair pulled back, my throat warm from vocal exercises. The smell of hairspray and hot lights mixed with coffee and nervous sweat. This was familiar territory. This was home. Or, at least, it used to be. I stopped near the production office to wait for my assistant. That's when I heard my name. Not spoken with excitement. Not with admiration. Spoken like a problem. She can't carry a tour like she used to, a man said. I recognized his voice instantly. Someone high enough in the chain to believe he could speak freely. People come for the name, not the performance anymore. Another voice chimed in, quieter but sharper. Exactly. It's nostalgia. The audience wants the memory of Whitney, not the reality. My chest tightened. I stood there, frozen, the door slightly ajar. Every instinct told me to walk away, to protect myself. But my body wouldn't move. My feet felt rooted to the floor, like the concrete had wrapped itself around my ankles. She's unpredictable, the first voice continued. Misses rehearsals. Changes things last minute. We don't know which Whitney we're getting anymore. I pressed my hand against the wall to steady myself. Which Whitney? Like I was a product with inconsistent quality control. The voices kept going, piling on assumptions, rewriting my life in neat bullet points. They talked about risk, about numbers, about how my name still sold tickets, but not forever, about contingency plans, backup acts, damage control. Not once did they talk about my humanity. Not once did they talk about the woman who had spent decades bleeding into microphones, breaking herself open night after night so audiences could feel something real. I wanted to burst through that door. I wanted to scream. I wanted to demand they look at me when they talked about me like that. But I didn't. I listened. And with every word, something inside me cracked. Because what hurt the most wasn't the criticism. It was the certainty. The way they spoke as if my decline was already decided. As if my voice, my soul, My purpose had expiration dates stamped on them by people who had never stepped into the spotlight with everything on the line. My assistant finally appeared at the end of the hallway. "Whitney," she called softly. "Sound check in 10. I nodded, forcing my face into calm. I walked away before anyone noticed the door, before anyone noticed me. But I carried their words with me like weights sewn into my pockets. On stage, during sound check, my voice felt different. Not weak, just heavy. Each note carried more than pitch. It carried doubt, anger, fear. I pushed through it, muscle memory guiding me, but my mind was elsewhere. "They think you're done." That sentence echoed louder than the speakers. Back in my dressing room, I sat alone, staring at my reflection. The woman looking back at me looked strong, composed, legendary even. But behind my eyes, something trembled. How many times had I defended myself without ever saying a word? How many times had I let silence speak for me while others shaped the narrative? I picked up my phone and scrolled through headlines, each one sharper than the last. Speculation, criticism, whispers dressed up as concern. Everyone had an opinion about my voice, my choices, my life. No one asked me what it felt like to carry all of it. A knock interrupted my thoughts. My stage manager poked his head in. 5 minutes, Whit. I stood slowly, smoothing my robe, taking a deep breath. This was the moment where I usually centered myself, where the noise faded and the music took over. But tonight was different. Tonight, I wasn't just walking onto a stage. I was walking into a judgment. As I stepped into the wings, the crowd roared, thousands of voices chanting my name with love, with hope, with expectation. The sound hit me hard, almost knocking the breath from my lungs. "They still believe in you," a small voice inside whispered. The lights dimmed. The band began the intro. I took my place just beyond the spotlight. And as I stood there, listening to the same name being cheered that had just been dragged through closed doors, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let anyone else decide who I was. I was going to answer. Not with anger, not with excuses, but with something they could never argue with. My voice. I stepped forward into the light, heart pounding, hands steady, ready to sing not just for the audience, but for my name. And I knew, before the first note even left my mouth, that whatever happened next would change everything. The first note left my body like a confession. It wasn't polished the way critics like to measure things. It wasn't wrapped in perfection. It was raw, intentional, and heavy with meaning. As it echoed through the arena, I felt the crowd lean in, not physically, but emotionally. That sound told them I was here, present, alive. But backstage, behind the curtains and beyond the lights, something else was unfolding. I didn't know it yet, but while I was singing my heart out, people were watching me with entirely different intentions. When I finished the song, the applause came fast and loud. The kind of applause that doesn't feel polite, it feels relieved. I nodded, smiled, let the moment breathe. Inside, my chest was still tight, my thoughts tangled in the words I'd overheard earlier. I wondered who else in this building thought the same things. Who was clapping because they believed and who was clapping because it was expected. As soon as I stepped off stage, the energy shifted. "Great opener," my stage manager said quickly, too quickly. "We're slightly adjusting the set list." That caught my attention. Adjusting how? He hesitated. Just for a second. Long enough. Just moving some things around. Conserving your voice. Conserving. That word landed wrong. "I didn't ask to change the set list," I said calmly. "I know," he replied, not meeting my eyes. "It's coming from higher up." Higher up. The same place those voices came from. I walked past him without another word, my heels echoing sharply against the corridor floor. My dressing room door was ajar, and inside I could hear hushed voices. My name again. Always my name. I stopped short, heart sinking. "She sounded good," a woman said. "Better than expected." Better than expected. Another voice followed. "Yeah, but don't get comfortable. One strong note doesn't erase the risk." Risk. I pushed the door open this time. The room went silent. Three people froze mid-conversation. My tour manager, a label representative, and someone I didn't recognize at all. He was older, suit-pressed, eyes sharp. The kind of man who never raised his voice because he never had to. I didn't realize this was a closed meeting, I said. My tour manager cleared his throat. Whitney. No, I interrupted gently.
You were talking about me.
I think that makes it my meeting too. The man in the suit smiled thinly. Whitney, of course. We were just discussing logistics. Then discuss them with me in a room, I said. Not around me. A beat passed. Then he nodded. Fair enough. I crossed my arms. What's the concern? No one answered immediately. Finally, the man spoke. There's pressure. From sponsors. From media. From people who want guarantees. Guarantees of what? I asked. That you'll deliver, consistently. I let out a slow breath. I've been delivering my whole life. He tilted his head. The narrative out there says otherwise. There it was again. The narrative. I don't perform for narratives, I said. I perform for people. The label rep shifted uncomfortably. Whitney, no one is questioning your legacy. This is about optics. Optics. Another word people use when they don't want to say fear. I want names, I said quietly. Who's pushing this? Silence. My tour manager finally spoke. There's talk of recording tonight's show.
Professionally.
In full. My pulse quickened. Recording for what? For review.
Review.
That was never part of the plan. Since when? I asked. Since this afternoon. And no one thought to tell me? The man in the suit folded his hands. We wanted to see how the first few songs went. I stared at him, disbelief creeping into my chest. So, this isn't just a concert. It's an evaluation. No one denied it. Something inside me hardened. You don't test me like a product, I said. I'm not a prototype. We're not your enemy, the man replied. We're trying to protect the brand. I laughed once, sharp and humorless. I am the brand. That landed. He stood. Whitney, let's not make this emotional. That was the wrong thing to say. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. Everything about what I do is emotional. That's why people listen. That's why they care. And if you think stripping that away protects me, you don't understand me at all. A knock interrupted us. 2 minutes, someone called from the hallway. I turned toward the door, then stopped. One more thing, I said over my shoulder. Who is he? I pointed at the man in the suit. A pause. Independent consultant, my tour manager said. Crisis management. Crisis. The word rang loud in my head. As I walked back toward the stage, the lights brightening again, one thought followed me relentlessly. If they were already preparing for my fall, who else had stopped believing? The band hit the intro to the next song. The crowd cheered again, unaware of the storm behind the curtain. I stepped into the light with a smile on my face, but inside, a dangerous question took root. If the people closest to me were planning for failure, who exactly could I still trust? And somewhere behind the stage, cameras rolled quietly, capturing everything, whether I wanted them to or not. The red recording light stared at me like an unblinking eye. I noticed at the moment I stepped back into the wings after the third song.
Small.
Almost discreet. Mounted above the lighting rig, angled just enough to capture the stage, but also angled enough to remind me it was there. Watching. Judging. Archiving every breath I took. They hadn't just turned this concert into a performance. They had turned it into evidence. I wiped the sweat from my palms against my gown and forced my breathing to slow. My voice felt strong. Not flawless, but honest. And yet, knowing I was being measured, sliced into segments, possibly compared to ghosts of my past, it tightened something in my chest that had nothing to do with breath control. Whitney, my vocal coach whispered as I passed her. You're doing great. Her eyes told a different story.
Concern.
Caution. Like she was afraid to say too much. I leaned closer. Who approved the cameras? She hesitated. They said it was for archival purposes. I almost laughed. Archival. That word again, polite, sanitized, dishonest. Back in my dressing room, I sat down hard, staring at my reflection as the muffled roar of the crowd seeped through the walls. I'd sung these songs hundreds of times. Thousands. But tonight, every lyric felt heavier, like it carried a footnote attached by someone else. I picked up the printed setlist from the counter. Red ink. Changes. Songs removed. Keys adjusted. Tempo slowed. All without my consent. My phone buzzed. A text from someone I hadn't heard from in months, a journalist I once trusted. Hearing there's concern backstage tonight. You okay? My stomach dropped. The leak had already happened. I typed back with shaking fingers. I'm fine. Just singing. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Then, they're saying this show could define your future.
Define.
I stared at the word until my eyes burned. As if my future hadn't already been written in thousands of hours of music, sweat, sacrifice, and soul. A knock at the door startled me. Come in, I called. It was my longtime background singer, Marla. She closed the door behind her and leaned against it, arms crossed. They're watching the monitors like hawks, she said quietly. Replaying sections. Timing your breaths. My jaw tightened. They never did that before. She shook her head. This isn't about the show. No, I said. It's about control. Another knock. This one firmer. The door opened before I could answer. The consultant, the man in the suit, stepped inside, carrying a tablet.
We need to talk, he said.
I didn't stand. You've been talking all night. He ignored that. There's concern about consistency.
There it is again, I said.
Concern. He tapped the tablet, scrolling. Your first song was strong. Second, slightly strained on the upper register. Third, excellent emotional response, but tempo drift. I stared at him. Are you giving me notes mid-concert? I'm giving you data. I don't sing data, I snapped. I sing truth. He sighed, like I was exhausting him. Whitney, this is bigger than one night. Sponsors are nervous. Media narratives are fragile. We need reassurance. Reassurance. And if I don't give it? I asked. He met my eyes for the first time. Then plans change. The threat was quiet. Professional.
Clean.
What plans? I asked. He paused just long enough. Future bookings. Television appearances. Endorsements. The story we tell going forward. I stood slowly, every muscle in my body tight. So you drag my name behind closed doors, record me without consent, and now you're holding my future hostage? That's an emotional way to frame it. I stepped closer. That's the truth. Another voice cut in from the hallway. Whitney, you're up in 30 seconds. The consultant took a step back. Go out there. Finish strong. Prove them wrong. Prove them. I walked past him without another word. As I reached the wings, the crowd erupted again. They had no idea what was happening behind the curtain. No idea that this wasn't just a concert. It was a trial. The band started the intro to a song I hadn't planned to sing next. I turned sharply toward the bandleader. What is this? He leaned over, whispering urgently. They changed it. They want something safer.
Safer.
Something snapped. I walked onto the stage anyway, smiling as the applause washed over me. I stepped to the microphone, heart racing, not with fear, but with clarity. This wasn't about hitting every note. This was about being heard. I raised my hand, stopping the band mid-intro. The crowd quieted, confused. I leaned into the mic. Tonight, I said slowly, I'm going to sing something because I need to. A murmur rippled through the arena. Behind me, I felt panic. Managers scrambling. Headsets buzzing. But I didn't look back. Because in that moment, I understood something they didn't. If they wanted to test me, I was about to test them. And whatever I chose to say next, whatever I chose to sing, would no longer be just music. It would be my answer. And I could feel it, deep in my chest, rising fast. This was the moment they would never be able to edit out. The silence after I stopped the band was louder than any applause I'd ever heard. Thousands of people sat frozen in their seats, waiting. The cameras didn't stop rolling. I could feel them, see the tiny red lights glowing like warning signs at the edges of the stage. Somewhere behind me, executives were probably shouting into headsets, scrambling to regain control of a moment that had just slipped through their fingers. I wrapped my hand around the microphone. My heartbeat slowed. Not because I was calm, but because I was certain. You know, I began, my voice steady, carrying effortlessly across the arena. There are a lot of things people say about me. A ripple of murmurs moved through the crowd.
They talk about my voice.
My choices. My life. Some of them talk like they know me. I paused. Let the words settle. But singing has never been about proving anything to anyone. I continued. It's about telling the truth, even when it makes people uncomfortable. Behind the curtain, I knew alarms were going off. This wasn't scripted. This wasn't approved. This wasn't safe. But it was real. I nodded to the band. Not the planned song, not the safe one. A different key, a different tempo. One that demanded honesty instead of perfection. They hesitated. Then they followed me. The first note came out lower than expected. Not weaker, deeper. I felt it vibrate through my chest, grounded and raw. The kind of sound you don't manufacture. The kind you earn. As I sang, something shifted in the room. The audience leaned in, not because they were waiting for a high note, but because they were listening. Really listening. But backstage, the reaction was very different. I learned later that my tour manager slammed his headset down, that the consultant cursed under his breath, that someone from the label said, "She's going off script," like it was a disease. Mid-song, the stage manager appeared in my peripheral vision, waving his arms subtly. Cut it short.
Move on.
Wrap it up. I ignored him. I sang like the cameras weren't there, like the headlines didn't exist, like the voices behind closed doors had never spoken my name. And when I finished, there was a half-second of stunned quiet. Then the crowd exploded. Not polite applause. Not rehearsed enthusiasm. This was something else. I stepped back, breathing hard, emotion rushing through me so fast it made my knees weak. I smiled, genuinely this time. I bowed my head, soaking it in. But as I turned toward the wings, I saw their faces.
Tight. Pale.
Furious. The moment I stepped off stage, hands grabbed my arms. Not roughly, but urgently. "We need to talk." "Now," my tour manager said. He pulled me down the hallway toward a small conference room I'd never been in before. The door shut behind us with a final, echoing thud. The consultant was already inside. "So," he said coldly, "that was a choice." I met his gaze. It was my choice. "You deviated from the set list. From the plan. From the messaging," he snapped. "Because the plan was to make me smaller," I said. "And I won't do that." "This isn't about your feelings," he replied. "This is about damage control." I laughed, softly, incredulously. "Damage? Did you hear that crowd?" "The crowd doesn't decide contracts," he shot back. "Sponsors do. Networks do. Public perception does." "Public perception," I repeated. "Or the version of me you're selling?" He stepped closer. "You embarrassed people tonight." "I embarrass liars," I said. Silence. Then my tour manager spoke, voice tight. "There's already fallout. Calls coming in. Media reps want statements. They want to know if you're stable." There it was. The word they always reach for when they don't want to say defiant. Or honest. Or uncontrollable. Stable enough to sing? I asked. Or stable enough to stay quiet? The consultant exhaled sharply. "You forced our hand." I felt a chill. "What does that mean?" He slid a folder across the table. Inside were printed emails. Talking points. A draft press release. My name in bold at the top. It spoke about creative differences. About a temporary step back. About concerns for Whitney's well-being. A narrative. Already written. "You planned this," I said slowly. "Before tonight." "We prepared for possibilities," he corrected. "You prepared for my failure." No one denied it. My chest tightened, not with fear, but with betrayal. "These are people I trusted," I said quietly. "People who smiled to my face. This is business, he replied flatly. I stood. Then you should know something. They looked up. I'm done letting business decide my voice. The consultant's jaw clenched. Careful, Whitney. Or what? I asked. You'll take things away from me? Rewrite my story. He leaned back. You don't understand how fast this can turn. I did understand. And that's what scared me. Because as I walked out of that room, past the buzzing headsets and whispering staff, my phone began to vibrate nonstop. Texts, missed calls, alerts. Headlines were already forming. Clips were being uploaded. Opinions were being shaped. And I realized something terrifying. My answer on stage had ignited something far bigger than a performance. I hadn't just challenged them backstage. I had challenged the story the world was about to tell about me. And now, standing alone in the hallway as the noise closed in from all sides, one question burned louder than any rumor. Had I just reclaimed my name, or handed them the excuse they'd been waiting for? By the time I reached my dressing room, the walls felt like they were closing in. The noise outside, voices, footsteps, ringing phones, pressed against the door like a living thing, desperate to get in. I locked it behind me and leaned my forehead against the cool wood, breathing slowly, deliberately, as if I could regulate the chaos by controlling my lungs. My phone wouldn't stop vibrating. I finally looked. Messages stacked on top of each other, friends, industry people, journalists pretending to be concerned. Someone had already clipped my speech. Another had slowed down the video, analyzing my tone, my posture, my pauses. Words like defiant, emotional, unpredictable flashed across my screen. They hadn't even waited for the show to end. I dropped onto the couch and closed my eyes. This was the part they never warned you about, the moment when standing up for yourself doesn't feel brave yet. It feels lonely.
Exposed.
Like stepping into the street without armor. A knock sounded at the door. Whitney, my assistant said softly. They're asking for you. Who? I asked, though I already knew. Everyone. I opened the door. My tour manager stood there, flanked by two people I hadn't seen before. Legal.
Suits.
Calm faces, tight smiles. We need to talk, one of them said. Privately. I laughed once. That's all anyone's been saying tonight. Inside, they spread papers across my table, contracts, clauses, highlighted sections. Words like non-compliance, brand risk, morality clause. The language of consequence. You're not in trouble, the lawyer said carefully. But tonight changed things. Tonight told the truth, I replied. He nodded, as if humoring a child. Truth doesn't always align with strategy. I looked at my tour manager. Did you know about this? He didn't answer right away. His silence said enough. You were going to let them sideline me, I said quietly. Weren't you? It wasn't supposed to happen like this, he muttered. We thought maybe you'd ease into it. Take fewer shows. Let the narrative cool down. Let me fade, I said. He looked away. The lawyer cleared his throat. There's an offer on the table. I raised an eyebrow. Already. A televised interview, he said. Carefully moderated. Friendly outlet. You clarify your intentions, reaffirm stability, reassure the public. And if I don't, he folded his hands. Then others will speak for you. There it was. The threat dressed up as help. I stood and walked to the mirror. The woman staring back at me looked tired, but not broken. Her eyes were fierce.
Awake.
I'd spent years shrinking parts of myself to fit expectations I never agreed to. Tonight I had finally stopped. What if I say exactly what I feel? I asked, turning back to them. No script. No filters. The lawyer's smile vanished. That wouldn't be advisable. That's not an answer, I said. My tour manager spoke instead. Whitney, they're already questioning your judgment. If you push now, they'll say you're spiraling. I felt something harden in my chest. They've been saying that for years, I replied. It's never stopped me before. Silence filled the room. Finally, the lawyer gathered his papers. Think about it, he said. But understand, this window won't stay open. They left me alone again. I sat back down, exhaustion crashing over me like a wave. My voice, my weapon, my shield, felt suddenly fragile. Not because it was weak, but because everyone wanted to own it. Another message buzzed in. This one stopped me cold. A leaked memo. Internal. Subject line. Contingency plan, Whitney, Houston. I read it once. Then again. It outlined potential steps if I became non-cooperative. Reduced appearances. Statement framing. Long-term, brand preservation, without my active involvement. They were planning a future, without my voice. My hands shook. Not from fear, but from fury. I wasn't just fighting rumors anymore. I was fighting erasure. A soft knock broke the silence. This time when I opened the door, it wasn't a suit. It was Marla, my background singer. Her eyes were wet. They're saying the clip is blowing up, she whispered. People are sharing it everywhere. Good or bad? I asked. She smiled through tears. They're calling it brave. That word landed differently.
Brave.
Not unstable. Not reckless.
Brave.
She stepped closer. You said what a lot of people wish they could say. I nodded slowly, something shifting inside me. Then maybe this isn't about damage control. She squeezed my hand. Maybe it's about control, period. After she left, I stared at my phone again. Messages from fans were pouring in now. Gratitude.
Love.
Stories of how my music had carried them through their own darkest moments. And suddenly, the choice became clear. If they wanted a version of me they could manage, they were about to be disappointed.
My phone rang.
Unknown number. I answered. Whitney, a calm voice said. This is the network. We want you live tomorrow night.
Live.
Unedited. High visibility. High risk. My heart pounded, not with fear, but with recognition. This was it. They thought my answer on stage was the problem. They had no idea it was only the beginning. I closed my eyes, inhaled deeply, and said the words that would change everything. Tell them I'll be there. And as I ended the call, one final thought echoed through my mind, clear, undeniable, terrifying in its power. If they thought hearing me sing was dangerous, wait until they heard me speak. The studio lights were colder than stage lights. Brighter too. They didn't warm you, they exposed you. I sat in the chair across from the interviewer, my hands folded neatly in my lap, posture calm, controlled. On the surface, I looked composed, professional, ready. Inside, my heart beat with the steady force of someone who had finally decided to stop running. 5, 4, 3. The red light blinked on. And just like that, there was no backstage.
No hallway to retreat to.
No curtain to hide behind. This was the world. Whitney, the interviewer began gently, there's been a lot of conversation since your performance last night. Some are calling it emotional. Others are calling it controversial. How are you feeling right now? I smiled. Not the polite smile I'd perfected over the years, but a real one. The kind that comes when you've already made peace with the consequences. I'm feeling honest, I said. A flicker of surprise crossed his face. You know, I continued, for a long time, people have spoken about me instead of to me. They've decided who I am based on moments they didn't live and battles they never fought. The control room went silent. I could feel it. They've dragged my name, I said calmly. Behind closed doors. In meetings. In headlines that pretend to care, while quietly cutting me down. The interviewer shifted slightly. Some critics say your response on stage was risky. I nodded.
It was.
I leaned forward. But what's riskier? Telling the truth, or letting a lie become permanent? There it was. The question no one wanted asked. I felt something loosen in my chest as I spoke. Not anger. Not defensiveness. Freedom. My voice isn't a machine, I said. It's lived in. It carries joy, pain, mistakes, healing. And I refuse to apologize for that. The interviewer glanced at his notes, then back at me. There are people in the industry who feel tonight could redefine your career. I met the camera directly.
Good, I said.
Because I'm done letting other people define it. Silence.
Not awkward.
Reverent. I didn't survive everything I've survived just to be quiet now, I continued. And I didn't work my whole life, to become a symbol people feel entitled to control. I paused, letting the weight of it land. My name is Whitney Houston, I said clearly, and I stand by every note I sing, every word I speak, and every part of my journey, especially the parts that make people uncomfortable. The light clicked off, but the moment didn't end. It traveled. By morning, the clip was everywhere. Not cut, not twisted, shared whole. Fans replayed it, quoted it, defended it. People who had never understood me before said they finally did. The narrative shifted, not because I fought it, but because I replaced it.
Calls came in, different ones this time.
Not about damage control, about opportunities, about respect, about listening. Some bridges burned, others rebuilt themselves. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was surviving my career. I was owning it. That night, alone in my hotel room, I stood by the window overlooking the city. Lights blinking, cars moving, lives continuing. I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who just wanted to sing, who never imagined her voice would become a battlefield. I whispered to my reflection, "You did good." Not because I won, but because I didn't disappear. Because when my name was dragged, I answered. And I answered with truth. Sometimes the most iconic thing you can do isn't hitting the highest note. It's standing still and saying, "This is who I am," and letting the world catch up. Reflection. This story isn't just about fame. It's about voice. About what happens when you stop shrinking to make others comfortable. Sometimes, the bravest answer isn't loud, it's honest. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications to never miss the next story.